During the pregnancy checkup, the doctor looked pale and asked, "Who was your previous doctor?" I replied, "My husband, he's also an obstetrician." The doctor immediately panicked and said, "We need proof, right now." My new OBGYN stared at the ultrasound screen, her face drained of all color, and then she looked at me with pure terror in her eyes. "Who was the doctor handling your previous checkups?" she whispered, and in that moment, my entire world shattered into a million tiny pieces. See, this pregnancy, my first one, just felt different. And it wasn't just because I was pregnant, it was because of Jacob, my husband. He treated me like a rare piece of porcelain, terrified it might crack. Jacob, you see, is an OBGYN himself, and at first, I thought it was a blessing. No need to find another doctor, he'd handle everything. He meticulously managed my vitamins, my meal schedules, even the temperature of the AC in our bedroom. In the early days, I felt utterly cherished. But as I entered my 7th month, that attentive care started to morph into something else, something that felt a lot like surveillance. Jacob insisted on performing all my ultrasounds himself, in his private study at home. He claimed it was for privacy. "I don't want another man looking at you, honey," he'd coo, and foolishly, in my love, I found it romantic. But there was another shadow looming over my pregnancy, my mother-in-law, Carol. In public, she was the picture of the perfect matriarch. Yet, when we were alone, a strange coldness crept in. She'd show up almost daily with this odd-smelling herbal tonic, practically forcing me to drink it. "It's for the health of the baby," she'd say. What unnerved me the most was the way she touched my belly. It wasn't the gentle caress of a loving grandmother, it felt more like an appraisal. One afternoon, her eyes fixed on my stomach with chilling focus, she murmured, "I wonder how much this grandson asset will be worth." "He's our most valuable asset." The word asset echoed in my ears. Not a blessing, not a gift, but an asset, like stocks or real estate. The unease grew. Jacob always brushed it off, saying my hormones were making me overly sensitive. But I knew. I wasn't hallucinating. Something was deeply, profoundly wrong. I needed confirmation, a neutral perspective. With trembling hands, I made an appointment at a clinic on the outskirts of the city. I used a fake name, paid in cash, and sought out Dr. Hayes, a maternal-fetal medicine specialist, highly recommended on a mother's forum. I lied to Jacob, telling him I was going to a reunion with old college friends. The guilt gnawed at me, but the fear was far greater. Dr. Hayes's clinic was a stark contrast to Jacob's somber study. It was bright, clean, the staff friendly. I relaxed, just a tiny bit. Dr. Hayes was a middle-aged woman, professional and serene. I explained I just wanted a second opinion for peace of mind, adding that I'd love a 4D ultrasound for the baby album. She smiled understandingly. "Well, let's take a look at that baby," she said kindly. I lay back. The cool gel touched my belly. A black and white image began to form on the large screen. The baby's strong, rhythmic heartbeat filled the room. "He's very active," I whispered, tears of relief welling up. The baby was healthy. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Dr. Hayes smiled. "Yes, Lucy. The baby is very healthy. A strong heart, a straight spine. Perfect." She moved the transducer, measuring. I started to relax, to enjoy the moment. Then, suddenly, the smile vanished from Dr. Hayes's face. She moved the transducer again, to a spot far away from the image of my baby. Her expression turned serious. She pressed a few buttons, enlarging the image on her own monitor. Then, with a swift, decisive move, she turned off my screen. "What's wrong, doctor?" My heart started to pound. "Is our baby okay?" "Your baby is fine," Dr. Hayes replied, but her voice was strained. She put down the ultrasound transducer and looked intently at me. A suffocating silence filled the room. "Who was the doctor who examined you previously?" she asked, her voice low but firm. I was bewildered by the sudden shift in atmosphere. "My husband, Dr. Jacob Reed. He's also an OBGYN. And his mother, Carol, has been helping me a lot." Dr. Hayes remained silent. She looked back at her monitor as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her face was pale. She rose from her seat, her hands trembling slightly. "Lucy," she said, her voice now alarmed and urgent. "I need to run some tests on you immediately, a full blood panel, and I'm scheduling an MRI for you as soon as possible." I started to panic. "Why, doctor? What is it? Is it cancer? A tumor?" She shook her head quickly. "No, it's not that. I don't know exactly what it is. But this object I'm seeing shouldn't be there. It doesn't belong inside your uterus." "What object, doctor? Please explain." I sat up despite the ultrasound gel still on my belly. A coldness, far more intense than any gel, spread through me. Dr. Hayes took a deep breath, trying to contain her alarm for my sake. She turned the monitor toward me. "Your baby is healthy. Look here," she said, pointing to the image of my peacefully curled up fetus. "But here," she moved the image, pointing to a spot near my uterine wall, quite close to the baby. There it was, a small, dense, oddly shaped shadow. It was precise in its form, almost like a tiny metallic capsule, in stark contrast to the biological tissues surrounding it. "What is that?" I whispered in horror. "That's the problem." Dr. Hayes looked at me. "I don't know. It's definitely not part of your anatomy, nor is it any medical device I'm familiar with. It's not an IUD. It's not an implant. It's a foreign body, Lucy. An artificial object." I stared at the shadow. "I've never had surgery. I've never had anything put inside me." "That's what worries me," Dr. Hayes said, turning off the ultrasound machine. "Your husband, Jacob, is an OBGYN. There's no way he would have missed this on the ultrasounds. It's quite obvious if you know what to look for." Those words hit me like a physical blow. If you know what to look for. It meant Jacob knew. His attentiveness, his prohibition on seeing other doctors, all the ultrasounds he had done himself. It wasn't to protect my privacy. It was to protect that object. "I need a sample of your blood," Dr. Hayes said, now in full professional mode. "I want to check for inflammatory markers, any heavy metals being released into your bloodstream, and we need that MRI. But we have to be very careful." Dr. Hayes looked directly into my eyes. "You must not, under any circumstances, mention this to your husband or your mother-in-law." "But why?" "Because if your husband knows about this and has been hiding it from you, you could be in grave danger. I don't know what the purpose of this object is, but it was placed there deliberately. We must assume a worst-case scenario." Dr. Hayes scheduled my MRI at a different hospital under a fake name, on the pretense of a nutritional consult. She drew blood and sent me home. "Act as if nothing happened," she warned. "Watch your husband. Listen, but don't give away your fear." The drive home was a nightmare. I drove in a daze. Every little kick from my baby now felt like a reminder of the other invader inside me. The asset. Was this what Carol meant? When I got home, it was evening. The house was quiet. Jacob wasn't back from work yet. Carol wasn't there either. I took a quick shower, washing away the remnants of the gel, trying to calm my racing heart. I had to act normal. Jacob arrived late, looking tired. He gave me a kiss on the forehead. "How was the reunion?" "It was good, honey. A lot of people came," I replied, struggling to sound casual. Jacob smiled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Don't wear yourself out. Remember, you're carrying precious cargo." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my side with my back to Jacob, feigning sleep. I felt his every move. Around 2 a.m., Jacob must have thought I was sound asleep. He slipped out of bed silently, making almost no noise. I held my breath. Jacob took his phone and left the room, closing the door carefully. I waited a few seconds before sliding out of bed. I opened the door a crack. Jacob hadn't gone far. He was standing in front of his private study upstairs, the door slightly ajar. I could hear his voice, a tense whisper. "She went to see another doctor." "Mom." My heart stopped. "Yeah, just a cheap 4D ultrasound. She said she wanted to see the baby's face." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's too dumb to suspect." There was a pause. Jacob was listening to the person on the other end of the line. I knew exactly who it was. "Carol, of course. I checked it last night while she was sleeping," Jacob continued, a hint of irritation in his voice now. "Don't worry. The object's position is still secure. The pregnancy hasn't shifted it. Everything is stable." Another pause. "Yes, Mom. I'll extract it myself during the delivery. I'll make it all look like a normal complication, then we can take care of the rest." Jacob let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Of course, I still have Richard Franklin's inheritance documents. Nothing has changed. It's all going according to your plan." I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. The object, the delivery, Richard Franklin's inheritance documents, my father. It was all connected to my late father. My husband, Jacob, and my mother-in-law, Carol, were conspiring against me. And the key to everything was inside my uterus, right next to my unborn child. I crawled back into bed. My body was ice cold, despite the stuffy air. I pulled the covers up to my chin, my eyes fixed on the closed door. Behind that door, in his study, my husband had just confirmed my worst fears. He wasn't just a controlling husband. He was a conspirator, a liar, and maybe a future murderer. And he was working for his mother. Richard Franklin's inheritance documents. What did this have to do with my long-dead father? Richard Franklin had been a successful businessman, but he had never flaunted his wealth. He lived modestly, and I had always believed my inheritance consisted solely of this house and enough funds for my education. I was obviously very wrong. I forced myself to breathe evenly. I couldn't let Jacob know I was awake. When he returned 15 minutes later, he moved silently, like a predator. I felt the dip in the mattress as he lay down. I could feel his breath on the back of my neck, steady and calm. I was sleeping next to a monster, and the monster was sleeping soundly. The morning brought a new kind of terror. How could I act normal? How could I let Jacob touch me, give me vitamins, smile at me? But I had to. My life and my baby's life depended on it. I smiled through breakfast and swallowed the vitamins Jacob gave me, then quietly threw them up in the bathroom. I needed to get out of this house. I needed answers. The only person who might know anything was my late mother's sister, my Aunt Martha. Aunt Martha was a simple, shy woman who had always kept her distance from me after my father's death. I'd always thought it was because she was uncomfortable with our wealth. Now I suspected it was because she knew something. I waited for Jacob to leave for the hospital. I have a surgery. Might be late, he said, kissing my forehead. I resisted the urge to wipe his lips from my skin. As soon as his car was out of sight, I rushed. I didn't dare take my phone, fearing Jacob was tracking me. I grabbed the car keys and drove to Aunt Martha's house in the suburbs. It was small, with a well-tended garden, a stark contrast to my own large, cold home. Aunt Martha was shocked to see a pregnant me on her doorstep. "Lucy, my goodness, what is it?" "Auntie, I need to talk to you. It's very important." Aunt Martha let me in and made me some tea, her hands trembling. "You're as pale as a ghost. Jacob, has he hurt you?" I wasn't expecting that question. "You never liked Jacob." Aunt Martha looked away. "It's not that. It's just the way he looks at you. The way your father used to look at your mother." I was confused, but I didn't have time. "Auntie, I don't have much time. I need to know about my father and a woman named Carol." Aunt Martha's teacup rattled so violently that tea spilled out. She set it down with a clatter, her face paler than mine. "Why are you saying that name?" she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "You shouldn't. She's my mother-in-law. That's why I'm here, Auntie. Please. Carol is Jacob's mother." "What do you know?" Aunt Martha let out a shaky sigh and began to cry, a low, repressed sob. "Stay away from that woman, Lucy. You have to get away from her." "I can't, Auntie. I live with them. She's my husband's mother. Please tell me." Aunt Martha took a deep, shuddering breath. "Carol is not a good person. Years ago, before your mother died, she was your father's personal assistant. She was very smart, very capable, but also cunning. Your father trusted her a great deal. What happened? She was obsessed. Not with your father, but with his fortune. Your father, Richard, was a good man, but he was also paranoid. He hid his fortune everywhere. He didn't trust banks. He didn't trust anyone." Aunt Martha continued, "One night, your father found Carol in his study trying to open his personal safe. Not the normal safe, but the one that held his secret asset ledgers. Your father was furious. He fired her on the spot." "Is that all?" I asked. "No. Carol didn't take it well. She threatened your father." I was in the next room. I heard her screaming, "You humiliate me, Richard. Your fortune should have been mine. One day I will get it. One way or another, I will take everything you have." I was silent. Richard Franklin's inheritance documents. Carol had been planning this for decades. "Auntie," I said softly. "My father's inheritance. What do you know about it?" Jacob and Carol kept mentioning it. Aunt Martha looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Your father was an eccentric, Lucy. After your mother died, he became even more paranoid. He said he had to protect his legacy. He created a very strange will. He said his main inheritance, valued at billions of dollars, couldn't be accessed without a special key." "What key? Where is it?" "I don't know. He just said he hid it in the safest place in the world, inside his most cherished treasure. Something people would never steal because they wouldn't know it was there." I looked down at my belly. "My baby." Aunt Martha quickly shook her head. "No, dear. Not his grandchild. This was long before you were married. Aunt Martha looked at me with horror, as if she had just realized something. Lucy, when you were about 15, did your father take you to a private clinic overseas, in Geneva? He had said it was for a minor medical procedure, some kind of new vaccine. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I remembered the clinic in Switzerland. They had put me under full anesthesia. My father said it was to strengthen my immune system. This object I'm seeing shouldn't be there, I swayed. Oh my God, Auntie. The object is inside me. Aunt Martha let out a small cry. He implanted it in you. Your own father implanted the key inside his daughter. And Carol knew, I whispered. That's why she made Jacob become an OBGYN, to marry me, to get me pregnant. I grabbed my aunt's arm. What do I do? They're planning to cut it out of me when I give birth. Aunt Martha was panicking. You have to go to the police. And tell them what? That my husband is too attentive. That my father implanted something in my body. They'll think I'm crazy. I knew I needed more than just a story. I needed proof. And I needed a powerful ally. Auntie, think. My father must have left other clues. Who was his lawyer? I don't know. He changed lawyers constantly. He trusted no one. Think again, Auntie. There must have been one. Aunt Martha closed her eyes tightly, trying to remember. Wait, there was one. He mentioned him only once. He wasn't a corporate lawyer. He was young, a rookie back then. Your father said he was the only honest man he'd ever met. The only one not blinded by money. His name was Alexander Vance. Yes, Alexander Vance. Your father said only Vance could execute his secret will. Only he knew how it worked. Alexander Vance, I repeated. I have to find him. I left Aunt Martha's house, my mind racing. I had a name, Alexander Vance, but I also had a new terror. The key was inside me. My own father had put it there, turning me into a walking safe deposit box, a target for anyone greedy enough to want his fortune. And now the wolf was already in my house. I had to get home before Jacob became suspicious. I had to act normal. But before heading home, I stopped at a small convenience store and bought a cheap burner phone. I wasn't taking any chances. That night was the longest torture of my life. I had to smile at Jacob. I had to let Carol, who had stopped by for dinner, stroke my belly. Such a healthy baby, Carol said with a sweet smile. We have to take good care of him. I wanted to throw up. I just nodded and smiled. I knew I needed tangible proof. Jacob's confession I'd overheard wasn't enough. Aunt Martha's story would be dismissed as hearsay. I needed something solid to take to Alexander Vance, and I knew where to find it. Jacob's study. The one that was always locked. The opportunity came 2 days later. Jacob got an emergency call from the hospital, an urgent C-section, a patient in critical condition. He left in a hurry. Mom will come stay with you, he said before he left. I knew my window of opportunity was narrow. As soon as Jacob's car was out of sight, I ran to the study. The door, as always, was locked, but I had noticed Jacob didn't use a key. He used a keypad on the doorknob. I tried my birthday, fail. Jacob's birthday, fail. Our wedding anniversary, fail. I panicked. I heard a car in the distance. Carol. I tried one last combination, something that disgusted me, my baby's due date. Click, the door opened. The pang of betrayal was profound. He had used our baby as a key. The room was cold and orderly. Behind a gloomy landscape painting on the wall, I knew there was a safe. I pulled the painting aside. As expected, a digital safe. I tried the same code, the baby's due date. Beep, the safe swung open. Inside, there was no money or jewelry, but a stack of documents labeled Richard Franklin. And on top of the pile, a thick, black leather-bound journal. I pulled it out. It wasn't a normal journal. It was a medical log. My hand shook as I opened the first page. It was about me. In cold, clinical handwriting, Jacob had documented everything. Asterisk first page, access to subject, Lucy, established successfully. Phase 1 complete. She shows interest as expected, asterisk pages from months later, asterisk wedding performed. Full access to subject achieved. C is very pleased, asterisk the most chilling pages were at the end. They started with the beginning of my pregnancy. Asterisk pregnancy successfully induced after 3 attempts. Subject is unsuspecting. Location of object confirmed via handheld ultrasound. Stable, no displacement due to fetal growth, asterisk. I flipped through the pages, breathless. The most recent entry was from a few days ago. Asterisk extraction plan for D-Day. Proceed with emergency C-section following staged failed induction. Claim fetal distress. Nuchal cord. Full general anesthesia will be used. This will provide sufficient time for object extraction after baby delivery, asterisk, and then a final sentence, in a different ink, as if added later, asterisk. C suggests a malpractice accident with the anesthesia overdose post-procedure. Cleanest way to eliminate future ownership complications. Subject does not need to survive once object is successfully retrieved, asterisk. My knees gave out and I sank to the floor. An anesthesia accident. They were planning to kill me. It wasn't just theft. It was a cold-blooded murder plot, designed by my husband and his mother. I photographed every single page of that journal with my new phone. My heart was pounding so hard my ears were ringing. I had to put everything back. As I was about to close the safe, my eyes caught something else, an old, yellowed envelope tucked under the pile of documents. It was handwritten in a flowery script I recognized as Carol's. It was addressed to Jacob at an old dorm room address. I opened the letter. The date was from 20 years ago, when Jacob had just started medical school. Asterisk. My dearest Jacob, the letter began. I know it's expensive. Mom knows, but it will be worth it. That coward of a father of yours would never understand. But we know what we're fighting for. Richard Franklin's fortune should be ours. He humiliated me, fired me, treated me like dirt just because I wanted what was rightfully mine. Now listen to me closely. I've discovered his secret. That fool Richard has implanted the key to his fortune inside his own daughter. That stupid little girl, Lucy. It's fate. Jacob, you must become a doctor, not a surgeon, not a pediatrician. You must become an OBGYN. It's the only way. You will make her fall in love with you. You will marry her, get her pregnant, and then you will bring home what is rightfully ours. Don't fail me, son. Don't be like your father. Do this for me. Do this for our future. All these sacrifices will be rewarded, asterisk. I stared at the letter in horror. This wasn't a new plan. This was a script written by Carol decades ago. Jacob wasn't just a bad husband. He was a tool sharpened for 20 years by his mother, aimed directly at my heart. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a key in the front door. Click, clack, Carol had arrived. Sooner than Jacob had said. I panicked. I scrambled to put the letter and journal back in the safe, closed it, and replaced the painting. I ran out of the study, locking the door with the same code. I made it to the living room, breathless, just as Carol walked in with grocery bags. Why, Lucy? Carol's sweet smile unfolded. Why are you panting so, dear? As if you've been running. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile onto my tight face. My hands were shaking violently behind my back. Oh, nothing, Carol. My voice sounded strange, even to my own ears. I just had a sudden craving for something sour. I was on my way to the kitchen. Why are you here so early? A knot formed in my throat. Carol was standing in the doorway, her smile like a kind porcelain mask. I brought you your favorite chicken soup, she said, holding up a grocery bag. Thank you, Carol, I replied, barely audible. I could feel Carol's gaze stripping away my every move, searching for any sign of anxiety. My hand, clutching the cheap phone in the pocket of my sweatpants, was damp with sweat. I had to act normal. I knew time was running out. Jacob's journal and Carol's letter were proof of a perfect crime. But that proof would be useless if I ended up dead on an operating table. I had to get out of this house. But how? Carol now followed me like a shadow, sleeping in the guest room next door, under the pretense of helping, watching every bite of food that entered my mouth. I knew I couldn't just run. They would catch me. I needed a plan, a distraction, and an outside ally. I thought of Dr. Hayes. I had that MRI appointment she'd scheduled. It was my only legitimate reason to leave the house without Jacob, but the appointment was 3 days away. I wasn't sure I had that much time. That night, after Carol had fallen asleep, I slipped into the bathroom. Locked the door, turned the faucet on full blast, and sat on the cold floor. I pulled out my burner phone. The reception was terrible, but I managed to send a single text message to Dr. Hayes, asterisk he knows. His mother, too. They won't let me go. They plan to kill me during delivery. I need to get out now, asterisk the reply came 5 minutes later, which felt like an eternity. Asterisk stay calm, Lucy. Do not panic. Move your MRI appointment up to tomorrow morning. Tell your husband it's a recommendation from your previous doctor for a pelvic check. Come to the address I'm sending you. Do not go back home. I will have a team ready. We have to make this look medically legitimate. A new address appeared. It wasn't the hospital where Dr. Hayes worked. It was a discreet private clinic. I deleted the messages. One problem solved. Now the second, Alexander Vance. I had a name, but not a face, not a number. I couldn't search for him online. I was sure Jacob and Carol were monitoring my internet activity. Then I remembered something. My father's study. The real study of Richard Franklin in the guest house out back. It was a place neither Jacob nor Carol ever went. They probably thought the room was filled with junk and bad memories, but I knew my father kept everything. In the pre-dawn hours, long before either Jacob or Carol was awake, I went to the guest house. The room smelled of dust, old paper, and wood. On the towering shelves, among thick business ledgers, I found what I was looking for, a thick, leather-bound address book. I opened it with trembling hands. Under V, I found it. Vance Alexander. Vance and Associates Law Firm. There was an office number and a personal number. I photographed the numbers with my burner phone. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hall. My heart leaped into my throat. Lucy, honey, it was Jacob's voice. What are you doing in here at this hour? It's so dusty. Not good for the baby. I quickly hid the phone behind my back. I was just missing Dad, I whispered, using the truth as a lie. I just suddenly wanted to see his things. Jacob studied me for a moment, his clinical gaze assessing me. And then he smiled. The fake smile I knew so well. Come back to bed. You need your rest. You have that MRI tomorrow, right? You told me last night. My blood ran cold. Oh, yes, honey. For a pelvic check. My old doctor said it was important. Of course, Jacob said. Good idea. Mom will take you. I have a major surgery tomorrow. I can't cancel. Carol would take me. This was a disaster. My escape plan was falling apart. I couldn't get away with Carol there. But I just nodded. Okay, honey. That's fine. I would have to adapt my plan. Tomorrow would be the day of my escape, one way or another. In the morning, I got ready, my mind working at top speed. Carol was already waiting for me in the car. I went to the bathroom one last time. I pulled out my phone. I knew I had only one shot. I sent a text to Alexander Vance, to that personal number, *I am Lucy Franklin, Richard Franklin's daughter. My life is in danger. My husband Jacob and his mother Carol are trying to kill me for my father's inheritance. I have proof. I'm on my way to the future of clinic on Rosewood Street now. Please, I have nowhere else to go. Track this phone, *. I sent it, then turned the phone off and hid it inside my shoe. The drive to the clinic was excruciating. Carol chatted on about how happy she was to have a grandchild soon. I just nodded along, my heart pounding so hard I was afraid Carol could hear it. We arrived at the clinic. It was small and discreet, very different from a large hospital. Carol looked at the building suspiciously. Why here? Why not a major hospital? It's a specialty clinic for pregnancy MRIs, Carol. It's safer, I repeated, using the excuse Dr. Hayes had given me. I went inside. A nurse greeted me. Lucy, please come change. Your mother-in-law can wait here. I'll go with her, Carol said sharply. I'm sorry, ma'am, the nurse said firmly. Strict rules. No companions in the changing rooms or the MRI suite due to the radiation. Carol looked furious, but she couldn't argue with medical procedures. She sat in the waiting room, her eyes fixed on the door I had disappeared through. I entered the changing room. Dr. Hayes was already waiting inside. You made it, the doctor whispered. She's out there. She won't let me go, I said, panicking. You're not going out the front door. Dr. Hayes pointed to another door behind a locker. That's the staff exit. There's a car waiting. Now give me your phone. I left it at home. Good. Now hurry. We only have about 15 minutes before she starts getting suspicious. Just as I was about to move, the clinic's fire alarm blared to life. Light smoke began to fill the hallways. There were panicked shouts from the waiting room. The changing room door burst open. It wasn't Dr. Hayes. It was Carol, her eyes burning with rage. Where do you think you're going, you little traitor? Carol snarled. She must have pulled the alarm herself. Dr. Hayes tried to intervene. Ma'am, what are you doing? This is a hospital. Carol shoved Dr. Hayes against a wall. Shut up. This is a family matter. She grabbed my arm. You think you're so clever. You'll never escape me. Jacob is waiting out back. We knew you'd try something. This was all a trap. Jacob didn't have surgery. They knew I would try to run. They had set me up. We're going to do that operation right now, Carol said, dragging me down a back hallway. I fought back. Let go of me. Please. They're trying to kill me. I screamed at the top of my lungs. We reached the back exit. There was no ambulance waiting, but a black van. Jacob was standing beside it. His face was cold and expressionless. He was holding something. A chloroform rag. I told you she wouldn't come quietly, Jacob said to his mother. The two of them grabbed me. I struggled, kicked, and bit, but my strength was failing. Jacob started to bring the cloth to my face. Stop right there. A calm but commanding voice cut through the chaos. Jacob and Carol froze. At the end of the alley, a man in an impeccable suit stood calmly. He was not alone. Behind him were two uniformed police officers. Who are you? Jacob shouted, still holding me. I'm Alexander Vance, the man said. I'm the attorney for the late Richard Franklin, and I represent my client, her. He pointed to me. Who has just informed me that you two are attempting to kidnap her. Carol laughed. Nonsense. This girl is my son's wife. She's hysterical. Probably ill. She might be, Alexander said. But her illness had the good fortune to send me a complete copy of this medical journal. Alexander held up his phone, showing the photos I had sent of Jacob's journal pages. And also a copy of the murder plot letter you wrote 20 years ago, Mrs. Reed. The color drained from Jacob's and Carol's faces. We received Miss Franklin's call, Alexander continued, his voice now icy, and we tracked the phone. But we also received an emergency package from Dr. Hayes with all the medical evidence, including the MRI results of the object in my client's uterus. Dr. Hayes stepped out from behind the policeman, her face tense, but determined. Jacob, Alexander said, as a doctor, you know what medical malpractice is, but as a conspirator, you just made a fatal error. You wrote it all down. The two police officers moved forward. Jacob Reed, Carol Reed, you are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to kidnap, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Jacob let go of me. He knew it was over, but Carol didn't. With an animalistic scream, she lunged at me, no longer caring about the baby or the key. If I can't have it, neither can you. But it was too late. The police already had her restrained. Jacob stood still, defeated by his own arrogance. I swayed, nearly falling. Alexander caught me. Lucy, he said gently. I'm Alexander Vance, your father's lawyer. You're safe now. I looked at the man, then at Dr. Hayes. My allies had come. I had made it. And at that exact moment, I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen. It wasn't from Carol's grip. This was different. I looked at Dr. Hayes with terrified eyes. Doctor, I gasped. I think my water just broke. I clutched my belly, a sharp pain that had nothing to do with fear tearing through my body. Amniotic fluid soaked my legs, creating a pool on the grimy alley floor. The baby was coming now, in the middle of this chaos, with my husband being arrested and handcuffed. Carol saw the pool at my feet. Her hate-filled eyes suddenly transformed into a terrifying focus. The baby, she shrieked. The key is being born. She began to struggle with inhuman strength, dragging the officer holding her. Jacob, get the baby. Get the key. Jacob, in contrast, was paralyzed. His face was ashen, not from the arrest, but from the sight of Alexander and his phone. He had seen his journal on Alexander's screen. As an expert manipulator, he knew when the game was up. The cold calculation in his eyes showed he had already abandoned the plan and was starting to calculate his sentence. But Carol hadn't. For her, it wasn't over. Coward, she spat at her son. After everything I sacrificed, get him. That's enough. Alexander's calm voice cut through the air. Officers, get them in the car. Get them out of this area. The second officer helped his partner, dragging a still screaming Carol and a deathly quiet Jacob away. As they passed me, Carol glared with pure hatred. This isn't over, Lucy. You'll never enjoy that inheritance. I'll rot in jail, but I'll make sure you suffer. Jacob said nothing. He just looked at me with no remorse in his eyes, only a cold void that was somehow far more terrifying than his mother's rage. Lucy. Dr. Hayes' voice brought me back to reality. The doctor was already kneeling in front of me, ignoring the chaos around us, her professionalism having taken over. Lucy, listen to me. You're in shock and you're in labor. The contractions are coming too fast. It hurts, I moaned, leaning on Alexander. The extreme stress brought it on. We can't deliver here. Dr. Hayes looked at her small clinic. And we can't go back in there. It's not sterile, not equipped for this. She looked at Alexander. We need to get her to a major hospital now. Alexander nodded. I'll call an ambulance. No time. Dr. Hayes said. Look at the interval of her contractions. 2 minutes. This is going to be fast. Use that police car they took them in. Tell them to put the sirens on. Alexander thought quickly. Too risky. We don't know if they have anyone else out here. We'll use my car. It's armored. A relic from your father, he said to me with a small, grim smile. He really was paranoid. Everything moved quickly. Alexander lifted me, and I cried out in pain as another contraction hit. Dr. Hayes grabbed an emergency bag from her clinic. They bundled me into the back seat of a heavy, black luxury sedan. Dr. Hayes got in beside me as Alexander took the wheel. Where to? Alexander asked. Metropolitan General. My team is on standby there. I told them it was a very important person emergency. The car sped off, weaving through traffic. For me, the ride was a blur of pain and fear. Every bump in the road felt like a knife. I'm scared, Dr. Hayes, I sobbed, gripping her hand. What if that key, that object, hurts the baby when it comes out? Dr. Hayes took my face in her hands, forcing me to make eye contact. Lucy, listen to me. You have been through hell. You have defeated 2 monsters. Now comes the hard part. But you are not alone. Focus on your breathing. Focus on your baby. I will worry about that damned object. Understood? Your only job right now is to deliver this baby. Leave the rest to me. Those firm words grounded me. I nodded, closed my eyes, and focused. They pulled up to the hospital's emergency entrance. A team of nurses and a gurney were waiting. It was a smooth, professional operation, the polar opposite of the chaos at the clinic. I was rushed immediately to a prepared private delivery suite. Alexander stood outside the door, coordinating with hospital security. No one was getting onto that floor without his authorization. I was hooked up to monitors. The baby's heart rate was strong, but my contractions were incredibly intense. Dr. Hayes examined me, fully dilated. Lucy, your body knows what to do. It's time to start pushing. I looked at Dr. Hayes. I was safe from Jacob. I was safe from Carol. Now I had to face the final challenge my father had placed in my womb decades ago. Push, Lucy. Push. Dr. Hayes's voice was my only anchor in a sea of pain. I pushed with every ounce of strength I had left, my body arching on the bed. The delivery room was a hive of focused activity. A nurse wiped sweat from my brow. Another monitored the fetal heart rate. I can't do it anymore, I whispered, breathless. Yes, you can. I can see the head. One more time, Lucy, push with all your might. I took a deep breath, and ignoring the burning pain and immense pressure, I pushed with a soul-tearing scream. And suddenly, all that pressure was gone, replaced by the sound of a loud, powerful cry, full of life. He's here, a nurse exclaimed. I collapsed back, spent. Tears of relief streamed down my cheeks. I had done it. My baby was safe, a healthy boy. Lucy. Dr. Hayes's voice was gentle for the first time. The doctor expertly dealt with the umbilical cord before passing the baby, still slick with vernix, to the pediatric nursing team. He's perfect, I cried silently, watching the team clean my son, the reason I had fought. He was healthy, but Dr. Hayes wasn't done. Her face grew serious again. She looked at me. Lucy, the baby is safe. Now, let's finish this. Don't move. The placenta will deliver soon, and I need to check on that object. I was too exhausted to speak. I just nodded. Dr. Hayes worked quickly. After the placenta was delivered, she performed a manual examination with extreme care, using a portable ultrasound probe at the same time to locate the object. Okay, good, she muttered. It hasn't shifted. It's far from the placenta implantation site. Your father knew what he was doing. The object was not in the uterine cavity, but implanted in the myometrium, the muscle of the uterus. Do I need surgery? I asked weakly. Not necessarily, Dr. Hayes said. I can get it out, but not now. You've just given birth. Your body needs to recover. Trying to remove it now would be too risky for hemorrhage. I looked disappointed. So, it's still inside me. For now, Dr. Hayes said. But it's inert. It poses no danger to you. Suddenly, the doctor paused. She looked at the ultrasound screen again. Wait, that's odd. What? I said, alarmed again. It looks like there's a small light inside the object. It's blinking very faintly. Dr. Hayes zoomed in on the image. My God, she whispered. The object is activating. Your baby's birth. Your baby's DNA must have triggered it. Just then, the delivery room door opened. Alexander walked in, flanked by 2 hospital security guards. He looked urgent. Lucy, doctor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just received a call from the Swiss Central Bank. Alexander looked both confused and tense. What? Richard Franklin's will just execute it automatically. His entire fortune, billions of dollars, has just been transferred into a new account in the name of Lucy Franklin and her descendants. It happened exactly 3 minutes ago, sir. Alexander looked at his watch. Dr. Hayes looked at Alexander, then at me, then at the ultrasound screen. Exactly when her baby was born. The birth was the key, a biometric key. I looked at my son, now cleaned and wrapped in a blanket, being brought over by a nurse. He wasn't just my baby. He was my liberator. The nurse placed the baby on my chest. I held him tight. Hello, little one, I whispered. Alexander came closer, a genuine smile on his face. Congratulations, Lucy. You did it. You're a wealthy woman, and you have a healthy son. But what about Jacob and Carol? I asked. They are being taken care of. They won't see the light of day for a very, very long time, Alexander said. There's still one problem, Dr. Hayes said, packing away her equipment. That key, that object, is still inside Lucy, and it's active now. We don't know what other functions it has besides triggering the transfer. Alexander stared at the blinking capsule on the ultrasound screen. I think I do, he said quietly. Your father, Richard Franklin, wasn't just paranoid. He was a vengeful genius. What do you mean? I asked. Alexander looked at me seriously. Lucy, I don't think that object just opened an account. I think it's been recording. Recording what? Everything, Alexander said. For years. Every conversation, every threat, every whisper. Richard Franklin didn't just give you an inheritance. He gave you a weapon. And we just turned it on. The procedure to remove the object took place 2 days after I gave birth. It wasn't major surgery, but it required immense precision. Dr. Hayes enlisted the help of a thoracic surgeon accustomed to dealing with foreign bodies, to perform the procedure while I was under light sedation. Alexander waited outside with a court order authorizing him to take possession of the object as evidence. The procedure was a success. When Dr. Hayes emerged from the operating room, she was holding a small sterile vial. Inside was a metallic capsule the size of a grain of rice, but slightly thicker. It was a dull color, but on its surface, a tiny blue LED light blinked, indicating it was still active. Here it is, Dr. Hayes said, handing it to Alexander. The relic of Richard Franklin. That crazy genius. Lucy is fine. She's in recovery now. This is your department. Alexander took it with a mixture of dread and awe. He immediately took it to the best digital forensics team in the country. What they found surpassed his wildest imaginings. The object was a biometrically powered audio recording device designed to be permanently active, drawing power from body heat and micro-nerve impulses. And as Alexander had suspected, it had been recording for 15 years, since the day it was implanted in my 15-year-old body. The audio data they extracted was terabytes large. Most of it was the trivial sounds of my daily life, teachers lecturing, chats with friends, the sound of movies. But Alexander and his team focused on the recordings from the day I met Jacob, and there they struck gold. The trial of Jacob and Carol was front-page news. At first, their lawyers, hired with the remnants of the money Jacob's family had paid out, were arrogant. They argued that I was an emotionally unstable wife, suffering from postpartum paranoia. They claimed Jacob's medical journal was just a record of fantasies or a misinterpreted research draft. They said Carol's letter was the emotional outburst of a misunderstood mother from decades ago with no relevance to any crime. They painted Jacob as a devoted doctor and Carol as a doting grandmother. I sat in the courtroom, my infant son Matthew in my arms. I was calm. Beside me sat Dr. Hayes and my Aunt Martha. Alexander stood with the prosecutor. Your Honor, Jacob's lawyer said, the prosecution has not presented a single piece of tangible evidence that my client ever intended to harm his wife, only conjecture and illegally obtained private writings. The prosecutor smiled slightly. Your Honor, we would like to present one final piece of evidence, Exhibit A. Alexander stepped forward and handed the court clerk a drive with the data. This evidence, the prosecutor said, was recovered from the victim's own uterus. A murmur went through the courtroom. Jacob's lawyer jumped to his feet. Objection. This is an absurd theatrical tactic. Objection overruled, the judge said. I've reviewed this forensic report. Proceed. The first audio recording was played. It was my voice and Jacob's, happily discussing the rug for the nursery 3 months prior. It sounded as clear as if they were in the room. Jacob's lawyer swallowed. The clarity of the recording was eerie. And now, the prosecutor said, we will play a recording from October 14th, at 2 a.m., recorded in the study of the defendant's home. Jacob's voice whispered, but clear, she went to see another doctor. Mom, yeah, just a cheap 4D ultrasound. She's too dumb to suspect. The object's position is still secure. Yes, Mom. I'll extract it myself during the delivery. I still have Richard Franklin's inheritance documents. It's all going according to your plan. Jacob in the defendant's box stared at the floor, his face ashen. Beside him, Carol began to tremble, not with fear, but with rage. And now, the prosecutor said, a conversation between the two defendants, recorded in their living room 2 days later. Carol's voice, cold and calculating, you need to be firm, Jacob. This pregnancy is making you soft. Don't forget the goal. Jacob's voice, I'm not getting soft, Mom. I'm just being careful. Carol's voice, caution doesn't get you billions. The anesthesia accident plan is the best, cleanest way to eliminate future ownership complications. She doesn't need to live long after we have the key. A collective gasp went through the room. A juror covered her mouth. Carol stared at me, her eyes on fire. And one more, the prosecutor boomed, his voice echoing. A recording from 20 years ago, recorded when the defendant Jacob, as a college friend, visited Miss Franklin's home while the defendant Carol, posing as a catering consultant at the time, spoke with him at the door. A younger Carol's voice hissing, look at that girl, Jacob, Lucy. Her father has implanted the key inside her. I know it. You must become an OBGYN. You will make her fall in love with you. You will bring home what is rightfully ours. Don't fail me. It was the smoking gun. Decades of conspiracy, murder plots, malicious intent. All recorded thanks to the paranoid genius of Richard Franklin. Jacob's lawyer sat down with nothing left to say. There was nothing to say. The judge read the verdict, guilty on all counts, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, medical forgery, and kidnapping. As the judge sentenced them to life in prison without the possibility of parole, Carol exploded. You think you've won? She screamed at me, struggling against the guards. You just got lucky, you stupid girl. You're just like your father. We'll get out. We'll get out, Jacob. Jacob, in contrast, didn't move. He just looked at me. His eyes filled with a hollow horror, the look of a trapped sociopath. His only regret was that he had failed. I met his gaze without fear. I hugged Matthew tighter. I had faced my monsters, and I had won. Legal justice was served. Now it was time for emotional justice. A year passed. My life was transformed. I moved out of the house filled with bad memories. I now lived in a bright estate by a lake, all glass and sunlight. The walls were adorned with photos of my son Matthew, who had grown into a healthy, happy toddler. Aunt Martha lived with me, her face no longer etched with fear, but with genuine happiness as she helped care for Matthew. Richard Franklin's fortune didn't just sit in a bank. With Alexander's full guidance, I turned my tragedy into a purpose. We established the Lucy Franklin Foundation. It was no ordinary charity. The foundation had 2 main branches. The first, run by Dr. Hayes herself, was the medical wing. It provided free legal and medical services to women trapped in situations of medical negligence or abuse, especially by their spouses or family members. Dr. Hayes' clinic was now a state-of-the-art facility that trained other doctors to recognize the subtle signs of covert abuse. The second branch, managed by Alexander, was the legal wing. It managed my entire estate and aggressively funded litigation against predators like Jacob and Carol. They were the nightmare of con artists disguised as love. I myself was the face of the foundation. No longer a timid victim, I was a strong philanthropist. My voice, quiet but firm, an advocate for those who couldn't speak for themselves. One day, I asked Alexander to arrange something. A visit to a maximum security prison. Are you sure, Lucy? Alexander asked. You don't have to do this. I know, I said. It's not for them. It's for me. The final chapter. Alexander and I sat in a sterile visitation room, separated by thick glass. 2 figures in dull orange jumpsuits were led in on the other side. Time had not been kind to Carol and Jacob. They had aged drastically. Carol, once so elegant, now had stringy, unkempt hair. Her eyes were filled with an ingrained hatred. Jacob looked worse. He was gone. His gaze was empty. The vestiges of his charisma were long gone, leaving him a miserable shell. Prison sources said they hated each other, blaming one another for their failure at every moment. Jacob didn't even look up, but Carol glared at me. I picked up the intercom phone. "Hello, Carol." "Hello, Jacob." Carol sneered. "Have you come to gloat? To enjoy your father's dirty money?" I smiled faintly. I signaled to Alexander. Alexander picked up the intercom next to me. "Good morning. I just wanted to inform you both that the civil litigation has concluded. All of your personal assets, Carol's house, Jacob's savings accounts, his physician's pension, even the furniture from your old home, have been seized as damages." Carol's face hardened. However, Alexander continued, "My client, Miss Franklin, is very generous." Carol's eyes flickered slightly, a foolish hope that I would show her mercy. "Mrs. Franklin has instructed me," Alexander said, "to transfer all of your seized assets to the newest branch of the Lucy Franklin Foundation. We're calling it the Carol and Jacob Fund for Victims of Medical Fraud. Your money will be used to help the very people you nearly destroyed." It was the final blow. It was perfect karma. Jacob finally looked up, his eyes showing a flicker of horror. Carol slammed her fist on the glass. "You devil bitch," she screamed. I finally picked up my own intercom. My quiet voice cutting through Carol's screams. "You were right about one thing, Carol. I have my most valuable asset." I pulled a photo of a smiling Matthew from my purse and held it against the glass. "This. Something you can never touch." I looked at Jacob, who was staring at the photo as if hypnotized. "And you, Jacob," I said softly. "You were a doctor. You took an oath to do no harm. You lost everything, not because of my father, but because you forgot your own oath. You failed as a doctor. You failed as a husband. And you failed as a human being." I stood up. I looked at Carol one last time. "You wanted my family's legacy. Well, now you have nothing." Alexander and I turned. We didn't look back. We walked out of that grim visiting room as Carol continued to pound on the glass and Jacob finally lowered his head and began to quietly cry. Outside, the sun was bright. I took a deep breath of the fresh air. I was free. I was strong. I was safe. I got into my car. In the back seat, Matthew was sleeping soundly in his car seat with Aunt Martha smiling as she watched over him. I smiled back. This story was over, and my new life was just beginning.